Welcome to the first episode of Burnout Society Film Club Reviews. My name is Samir, and hopefully this is the first of many videos that I post to our YouTube channel of kind of like one-off movie reviews that are separate from our podcast episodes. I'm mainly doing this because it's taking so long for us to make our podcast episodes, and this is due to scheduling conflicts. So we finally have some time set aside at the beginning of November, so maybe in a couple weeks we'll meet and record our second podcast, which is going to be about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and Motel Hell, and then hopefully shortly after that we can record episode 3, which is going to be about Halloween 3 and Trick or Treat. So I went and saw Halloween this morning, and by Halloween I don't mean the John Carpenter classic or the shitty Rob Zombie remake. I'm talking about the sequel that's currently in theaters, and this is a direct sequel to the John Carpenter original, actually eliminating all of the continuity from all the films, acting as though they don't exist. So this is actually number 2 in the series, and not, it even gets rid of, it even acts as if the events in the original number 2 don't exist. So as far as the premise goes, I mean, you can pretty much like figure out what the movie's about from the trailer. I mean, it doesn't really hide too much information, and I mean, the plot's very basic. It's just, movie takes place 40 years later. Michael Myers finds a way to escape from the institution that he's currently in, and he has a final showdown with Laurie Strode. I mean, it's pretty basic. I mean, I guess it's just all the things that happened in between that makes it good, of course, and the continuity difference, the striking differences are with Michael Myers not being her brother. So that's like one thing that's like, they totally eliminated. Of course, like I mentioned, they eliminated all the continuity. So that's one, glaring difference. And then 2, the other glaring difference is that in Halloween H2O, she had a son, and in this one she has a daughter, and then her daughter also has a daughter as well. So Laurie Strode is a grandmother. So I'm going to go on to like the little gripes that I did have about the film. I felt like the first act was a little clunky. It did take quite some time to get the movie kind of moving along, and I don't know. It was just something about it that I just kind of just felt like a little disappointed. But once the movie did start taking off, it was great. I thought it was a good movie. I think I had the same issues with Force Awakens. I felt the same way in that film, when it was just like it just took a while to get things moving, and then once they did, it was much more of a satisfying experience for me. So another gripe I had was just how everyone sort of treats Laurie in the film. It's so you can see that the amount of time that has passed, that things haven't been going well for Laurie. She's just become more paranoid. She's sort of turned into a doomsday prepper of sorts, but the doomsday here involved is the inevitable day that Michael Myers would escape and come back to find her, and they would have this sort of final fight. So she's trained herself, she's trained her daughter, and almost had her daughter taken away by CPS because of the things that she was putting her through, as far as training, almost kind of like similar to Linda Hamilton and Edward Furlong, like their sort of relationship in Terminator 2, but kind of like imagine that as being Edward Furlong being in his a 40-year-old, and nothing in the Terminator films have happened, and just kind of just feeling like all of this was for nothing, and she's kind of delusional at this point about it. But yeah, it just felt like everybody was just like kind of like telling her to just kind of like let it go, and just being really cold about it, and just in general just kind of just being very dismissive of the events in the first film. Like you gotta like wonder like how like something like that would affect like a real human being later on in life, like what kind of impact that would have. And I think that they really treated it, I think, well in this film, but just like the way that everybody kind of like reacted to it was just a little bothersome to me. Like I was just kind of just like, I don't understand why everybody's like this, cold. Like I can understand the resentment between the daughter, but even her resentment was just like a little too cold. So I don't know. It just kind of like bothered me. And then some of the dialogue was just a little unnecessary. There's like one scene that leads up to the sort of the big event that really gets the movie going, which is Michael Myers escaping on a bus. So what happens in the film is that Michael Myers is being taken to a different facility, and it's predictable that this was going to happen, that he's going to find a way to escape, on the way to the facility. So this car pulls up and discovers that the bus has is off the road, and the people on the bus are just kind of like wandering around, similar to in the first film how people, when he escaped, people were walking around the front gate of the institution. So before they get there, there's a boy like speaking to his dad about hunting, and just kind of like going on about like he'd rather do his dance classes and how dancing was important to him and stuff. And I was just kind of just like, I don't really know why we're kind of having this dialogue with them right now. I mean, if it's to like feel sorry for them once they get killed, because we know where they're going to get killed. We know they're either going to get killed or their car is going to get stolen. So it's kind of pointless to kind of just build up this amount of like time to where we kind of like get to know them, because I mean they're just going to be gone just like that. Not too much later, or not too much. They're going to be gone after that, not too much longer after they have this dialogue. And a similar thing happened with two cops, like towards the end. Similar thing happened with two cops towards the end, where they were talking about like banh mi sandwiches, and I just felt that it was like really like unnecessary to kind of like build their characters at that point, because I mean they were, one of the dudes has his head like hollowed out and turned into a jack-o'-lantern. So I mean, like, I really didn't need to know like that he liked brownies or whatever, because I mean he's just going to be that expendable. I mean it just didn't seem like it was necessary. Like that kind of like that dialogue could have just been like cut from the script, and no one would have cared, about that, or like wondered about those people. There's that scene where Laurie Strode was like, "Oh, you're the new Loomis." And I just thought that was really dumb. That was so like not needed, in the dialogue. Like I mean, I thought that was already established. Like, it was like way too late to like say something like that in the movie. It seems so like unnecessary. Those are the gripes that I had, and they're not big gripes. It didn't ruin the movie for me. It was just like, if I had a gripe about something, it was those things. So obviously, like, the pros of the movie, just the way they handled Laurie's character. Like I said, I really thought that it made the most sense. It made more sense than Halloween H2O, which I caught some glimpses of that on AMC over the weekend, and I think when I saw it as a teenager, like, I originally liked it. I thought it was an okay film, but they were really just kind of like banking on like the whole like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and that kind of vibe. So and it's definitely dated. It's definitely dated when you watch it. You can tell that that's what they were going for. So yeah, and it just doesn't seem like a good send off when you watch it. That, especially like, I didn't see the follow up sequel to it, but I've read enough to know that it wasn't. It just wasn't like a proper send off at all. It was just kind of a mess, and then, that's what led to the Rob Zombie remakes, and then, here we are today. But anyway, I just thought that, just kind of showing her, as, what it's done to her psyche, as a person, who's gone through that, the emotional stress, just, and then also kind of like, well, what does that do to, the people who weren't involved in it, but they kind of see this person dealing with it, and they're trying to figure out, like, well, how they handle it or how they approach it, but it's it's not it's not something that they had to go through, but they kind of like deal with the ramifications of her having gone through it, and then her kind of imposing that onto them, and then you see obviously later on that the daughter and the granddaughter, it's all three of them fighting against Michael Myers at the end, which I thought was cool. David Gordon Green did an amazing job with just the shots that were done, and just a lot of there's just a lot of like a awesome, amazing shot. Like, cinematography is great, atmosphere was great. It just kind of, it feels right. It just feels like it has a similar atmosphere to the original film, and not necessarily like duplicating it, but it felt right. It had the right amount of gore and gruesomeness. I think a lot of people have noted that you don't actually see a lot of the kills. You just kind of see the aftermath, and I mean, there's just a lot of like Michael Myers like slamming people's heads into shit. So you get to see that. I mean, there are some kills that you do get to see, which are pretty like pretty intense. But I felt that it was good for like a modern like slasher film, kind of like up to date, and not just not. I mean, it was definitely like I would say a hard R, and as far as the gore level went, it was up there. It's definitely one of the, probably, I don't know, I guess maybe on the same level as the Rob Zombie movies. It's just kind of hard because I only saw those ones like once, and I just didn't like them. But I just remember them being like very, very gruesome and very gory, and brutal. And I think that this film, and I think this film captures that for sure, and just kind of puts it in more of the atmosphere of what the original John Carpenter movie had. Yeah, just like taking the gruesomeness of the Rob Zombie films and putting it into that atmosphere. So I thought it was great. I thought the acting was great. All of the actors did wonderful. I mean, it just it just seemed like a very well made film. It was just very well made, very well done. I think out of all the actors, I really like the kid actor who was playing Julian. I thought that his exchange with his babysitter was just like priceless. I mean, it was pretty it seemed pretty genuine, and it was priceless. And I mean, I kind of like wonder, well, like shit, like what happened to that kid after experiencing a run-in with Michael Myers, hanging out in his closet. And I also thought it was awesome that he was watching Repo Man on the TV. So like, here's this dude just chilling, as babysitters trying to put him to bed or whatever, is talking about putting him to bed, and they're just like chilling, like casually watching Repo Man on TV. And like, this kid's pretty awesome. Like, he has some good taste in movies. I thought the soundtrack was great. I had listened to the soundtrack ahead of time, and I was honestly kind of disappointed because I wasn't sure really how it would fit into the movie. I'm a big fan of John Carpenter's soundtracks overall, and I like listening to them outside of watching the movies. So it definitely wasn't like a soundtrack that I would continue to listen to outside of watching the movie. But once I saw it on the big screen in the movie, I thought that it worked really well, and it was a really effective soundtrack, and it was really good. So I've been seeing these articles, talking about the post-credit scenes in the movie, and honestly, there really wasn't. It was just you can hear Michael Myers breathing, so I guess they're suggesting that when they burned him at the end in the house, that he survived. I don't know. I guess we'll find out once Halloween 2 or whatever. I don't know what they're gonna call it, but whenever the next Halloween comes out, I guess we'll figure it out. What happened to Michael Myers? If he made it out, or if it were, I don't know, if it were someone different, or I don't know. And just overall, it was a really great slasher film. I haven't seen like a slasher film like that well made. I don't know. I mean, honestly, they just kind of get written off as not being that well made, and I just thought this was like a really good. It was a really good slasher film, and I would have to say it was definitely my favorite Halloween sequel. I think it's one of the best. I don't think that it's better than the first Halloween movie. I hold that one up in high regard, but I do think that this was a superior sequel to all of the Halloween movies. So if you haven't checked it out, you definitely should go check it out in the theater. I thought it was really good. I think most people will enjoy it. If you're a fan of the Halloween movies, and even if you're not, I mean, maybe this will be the one that kind of like gets you into it. I know I'm not a big fan of 4, 5, and 6 in the series. I barely remember them. I mean, other than the story arc in 4 and 5. I love 3. I love 3 for being like a separate film on its own, without having any relation to the first movie or the second movie or anything like that. And you do get a little bit of an Easter egg in this Halloween where they have the silver shamrock mask. So I thought that was awesome. And I think it's picking up in its cult following now. I mean, obviously we're showing it at our next 8-Ball movie night event, and we'll be talking about it on the podcast. But yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite out of the sequels. But I don't even really like consider it like a real true sequel because of the fact that it doesn't even it doesn't have Michael Myers in it, and I think that's like a really important part of the series, is that it has to have Michael Myers in it. And I remember liking 2 early on, but I don't really remember too much from 2 anymore. It doesn't really it doesn't really stick with me other than it's just, like what happens later on that night sort of thing. And then, yeah, I mean, H2O is, I think I liked it. Like I said, I liked it as a teenager, but just kind of watching it now, it doesn't really hold up. And I do not like the Rob Zombie movies. So this is clearly why this is like my favorite Halloween sequel. So hopefully you get a chance to check it out before it leaves the theaters. This has been an episode of the Burnout Society Film Club Reviews. I'll see you next time.